I think it's quite difficult to do a direct correlation between something like an ETF and what should you buy, in the art market to be safe, in a sense, or to reduce your risk. And I think the point is, obviously, if you don't want to go and spend money on good advice from either an advisor or spend a lot of time doing your own research, you'd have to establish a few sort of so-called rules of thumb, I think. And perhaps one or two of them, besides saying, get some good advice, is start off, if you really want to start buying good work, start off with an established, successful gallery. That doesn't mean that you're going to necessarily get the discounts or anything, but at least a gallery that's been around for 30 years in a permanent place, has been dealing with artists for some time, has something to lose if things go wrong, and there's everything to gain through having clients. So if you go to the major galleries in Johannesburg or Cape Town and you spend some time speaking to the owners, looking at what they're doing, you're probably going to be on a fairly safe route. Your returns might not be as great, or you wouldn't be able to perhaps exploit the opportunities of pieces coming up on auction and acknowledging or recognizing that they might be quite valuable just because they're not fashion of the month and that sort of thing. But starting off with essentially a good broker really, art broker, is perhaps a start if you want to carry on. The other thing is obviously contemporary art is a high risk environment. So I think in principle, if you go into the cutting edge contemporary art, you are betting. And like any casino, the house bets against you anyway. So be careful when you're doing contemporary art. It's always going to be a high risk, but the returns can be exceptional, especially when those artists start gaining international recognition. My other rule of thumb is really, if you're looking at current art practice in South Africa, artists that are in their late 30s, early 40s, and they're still exhibiting regularly, they have exhibitions in groups, or they're exhibiting in reputable galleries on a biannual basis. They're shown there, they have established themselves as collectible for museums. That the likelihood of those artists being successful over longer term is pretty good. What I wouldn't advise is, you can take the risk of course, is artists that are just coming into the market. They appear obviously to look quite reasonable, but because there's so few artists that actually succeed, out of 100 you can probably talk about 5 or 6 artists that actually achieve some success. So that's the proportion of your risk when you go and buy a young student work who's finished his master's degree, exceptionally good work, he's got all the right things in terms of his studies and the exhibition, but I have so often come across that, 3 years later they've gone into a completely different occupation. So that's the risk you play with, and then essentially, obviously the whole point about collecting is also the enjoyment of making those choices and finding out and having the success. But obviously when the failure comes around that you've made a wrong choice, you have to take that as well. But that doesn't mean that the artwork is poor necessarily. It just means that it's perhaps not that investment piece that you have. And certainly you can still enjoy it at home and understand the context and the background from whence it came, and it will still have meaning even in the art world, even if people didn't value it highly in monetary terms.